Hey, this is Wayne Cook, and you're listening to the What's Bruin Show Network.
From your boy, Deshaun Foster, I'd like to give UCLA B team a shout out. Hope you guys keep up the good work.
Everybody, welcome to this B Team space where we are going to talk about the fact that UCLA made a bit of a shocking head football coach hire today. The news filtered in around, what was it, 11 a.m. your time, around 8 a.m. here. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that UCLA hired one legendary running back, Deshaun Foster, to be the head coach of UCLA football. I have thoughts. Some of you have already heard some of them if you were listening to another space this morning. I will get into
the only way you wouldn't have thoughts is if you were dead. Let's be real.
Are you saying I wear my heart on my sleeve, sir?
Yeah. No, I'm saying you speak your heart through a megaphone.
Yeah, basically. It shocks me that anybody cares what I have to say, but thank you guys for caring, or at least being interested in it enough. But anyway, Nathan, with that, I've set the table for you. Go ahead, run with it. Tell me about your feelings of glee, maybe slight horror. What was going through your head, and how are you feeling about it?
Okay, I will say that I will lay the groundwork that, as I told our friend Ryan Rosenblatt yesterday, my expectations for this coaching search were so low that practically anybody but David Shaw would be considered a victory. And I would alter that to be, PJ Fleck would have pissed me off too. Or a Greg Schiano or something ridiculous like that. So that's not a fully accurate statement, but that's, where my standards were. But I was on board. I liked the Tony White hire. I liked the idea of looking at the San Diego State coach. Yeah, like I was pretty open-minded. I had some ideas, but it was pretty much along the lines of what I think the general trend of UCLA fans that I at least have paid attention to is let's go young, let's go dynamic, let's go, personality and relatively low risk, high upside. And I suppose if I had thought about it, at the fact that Deshaun left already for the Raiders probably put him definitely off my radar. But I did not think of him as a candidate. And I will fully admit that because I would have thought he would have gone up through coordinators first or just, it didn't even occur to me that it was possible. But I will be honest that had it occurred to me, I probably would have included him on the list of the kind of guys I was looking at, or that I thought would be good because he seemed to check a lot of boxes to me based on what I know, which I think I have been very consistent that I know a lot less than, you do, Hannah, about these things. So just based on general impressions and quote unquote vibes. But when that came through, I was dumbfounded. I was speechless. Honestly, for like an hour afterward, I had that kind of like, heart fluttering kind of shakiness. Like I couldn't believe it. I will put it out here that this has brought me joy and interest in UCLA football in a way that I have not felt in a long time, in far too long. And I will absolutely concede that there are significant issues with this hire, and the process of it seems to have been pretty much worst case scenario process wise. And so I don't make any defense about that. But the fact is that my favorite athlete of all time just came back to the program and gets to be its face and lead it. And it could very well not work out. I think it could work out, but it could very well not work out. And I am going to choose, I'm not going to make anyone else do this. I am going to choose to take the joy from that now while I can and not let my worry about the future spoil this particular moment of, just being excited about, someone whose career I really care about and who I have really fond, memories of and feelings about, kind of takes over a position that had been a source of so much, dejection and apathy for the last couple of years. So I think that's where I'll start off.
No, I mean that's perfectly fair because at the end of the day, the nature of the position has changed fundamentally. So there is more room in the sport right now for a type of CEO, head coach. You're like it's ideally made for somebody who is going to invest in NIL and kind of just the comparison I made on a previous space was that you're looking for somebody who could be like the mayor of the program, basically the mayor of Westwood, the guy who's going to glad hand donors, fleece them of their money when they don't even want to part with it, but they're just like, oh my goodness, that guy was so charismatic, I couldn't help but do it. You hire great coordinators and you kind of just oversee the culture and the kind of locker room development and donor relations. I compared it to a Mac Brown model. I think that's the way that the sport is going. I think there is a world in which Deshaun Foster could actually be the person to do a significant part of that. I'm more skeptical about the donor part, but I think of as far as leading a group of men, I think people will gravitate to him in that regard. Once they get in the locker room, they will play for him. But getting them in the door is the part I'm a little more skeptical about.
Yep.
I don't have to talk about that right now, though. In general, though, in a best case scenario, how do you see Deshaun Foster based on what you know about the guy? How do you see him kind of taking the mantle and turning something that is worthy of skepticism into something that's like, wow, we really pulled a rabbit out of the hat? And what happens in that world to get to that point?
Sure. I think that he has I think he has some growth to do. So I don't know how he would be at choosing coordinators and staff. So that is not, I wouldn't say that's a growth area. That's just an unknown. My understanding is that he, has some growth to do in terms of the public face, glad handing, schmoozing, working donors, aggressive recruiting. I don't know enough to think that he can't do that, but my understanding has been that he has not. And so I don't want to assume that he won't be able to. And obviously we'd like to be able, it would be nice, all else being equal, to be able to say we hired someone who has a proven ability and interest in doing that. But I'm not convinced that he can't, become comfortable or step into that role if having it thrust upon him. I will say, I'm going to be very guarded in what I say here because I do, like everyone else, have a lot of choice words about the administration side of this. But I will say that it encourages me to see specifically recruiting and NIL mentioned in the announcement as something that they chose him because of his ability to do that, which to me at least sets a standard that we expect our head coach to be able to do it. Which, in an optimistic, from an optimistic perspective, says that they at least recognize that was missing and that was a problem with Chip.
All right, so I can't let you off the hook without making you kind of acknowledge the flip side as well, though.
Yep.
In a world where this doesn't go as hoped, is there? This is just to kind of. I'm going to step on toes a little bit. I have to apologize for this, but part of me, what I wrote in my initial reaction, my initial reaction tweets, I wrote that I resent the fact that they are setting up somebody that I really, really, really like to be a fall guy in the event that things go to worst case scenario.
Precisely.
Do you have any of that kind of sentiment?
Yes, in the sense that, just in a, protective of my favorites sense, I hate to think of fans turning on him or losing respect for him if he has been put in a position that's not fair to him. How's that?
No. Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I just can't press the button because I'm crazy, I guess. No, I think that I'm with you on that. So
if I can, my
okay.
thoughts real quick about the process. The first thing there are two main worries here for me. Two main red flags. I mean, I think it's probably an entire UN front lawn of red flags, but the two that stick out to me is one, this immediate, get back to that question of when you're hiring an alum, you want to make sure you're not hiring an alum that no one else was looking at. You know what I mean? Like, you want to hire an alum that was in demand. And I don't think that Deshaun was going to be up for any other head coaching positions. I'd never heard his name mentioned like that. And so, there is a bit of Carl Durrell about this, that like, oh, okay, he's one of our guys and he's going to get a head coach job. And, you almost feel like you force your own hand or you limit yourself in that way. And that is worrisome. That really is worrisome. And then the other, I guess before I move on to that, what I don't know, and you may know, and certainly someone does, but like, I don't know because I'm not sure why you didn't go with Tony White, right? Because why he wouldn't have fit all these things. The only thing I think is maybe something didn't work out there. Maybe he said no because of the NIL, he got poisoned on what the NIL infrastructure was. Maybe, there was money differences that, for wrong reasons, they didn't want to be able to move forward. They couldn't move forward with what it would take money wise. Maybe it didn't work out, but if it just came down to like, they could choose, do we want to pursue White or Foster? Setting aside, my esteem of Foster, I got to wonder why they would go the way that they did. And that is concerning to me.
I do have an answer for you on that, but go on.
Okay. The other red flag though is this idea that, and I listened to the broadcast today on it, that reading the signs that this is a continuity hire for them, whether it's because they didn't want to have to pay a bunch of buyouts for contracts that Chip had them, sign for the 2 years for all of the assistants, real cheap ass stuff like that. Or whether, even more scary, this is a continuity hire because they felt that everything was going fine and they just lost their head coach. That they aren't looking as to a repudiation of a failed regime, but they're looking to continue what they consider to be a successful regime. If that's the case, that's terrifying. And I would agree with the sentiment I've seen online that better not turn into limitations of what Foster wants to do with his staff, because no, we want to keep the people we have. You have to keep, X, Y, and Z because of either money reasons or, to keep this train rolling, because I don't know that the train is rolling. Or I know that it's not, and it's about to derail and explode if we, continue to try and push it in the direction it's going in the Big Ten.
So my answer to your first question was what you just said for that second one. So that is, that is the word that's leaking out right now, is that there is an expectation that he will retain the staff that chooses to stay at UCLA. Like, for example, Ken Norton left today to the I was going to say their old name, the Commanders. Yeah. So if you realistically think about what's left on the staff, you have Jerry Neuheisel as the quarterback's coach and quote unquote passing game coordinator.
I thought he was the receivers coach. Oh no, he got promoted to quarterback's coach.
Was he quarterback? Is he receivers coach and passing?
He originally was coordinator. He was originally receivers, but I feel like this offseason he may have gotten moved to quarterbacks. I can't remember.
He's passing game coordinator, regardless. Westwood Bruins, I see you, man. I will get you. Give me 1 second. And you'll probably clarify for me on Jerry. I could just Google it, I suppose. But I know Tim Drevno is the offensive line coach and the run game coordinator, quote unquote. They don't have a tight ends coach. They either don't have a receivers coach or a quarterbacks coach, one of the two. They don't have a running backs coach, but interestingly, Bruce suggested that Deshaun Foster might coach running backs, which makes no goddamn sense to me. But anyway, on the defensive side of the ball, you have Kaika Molloy as the defensive coordinator, and I think he's like defensive ends coach or defensive. I don't think he's defensive line coach. I think the guy they hired from Oregon is defensive line coach. You're missing a linebacker coach. Then you have Norwood and you have Cody Whitfield coaching the various parts of the secondary. It's a bit crazy to me to think that this program would be. I need to choose my words carefully here. That this program would make it a prerequisite to anybody who was interested that they retain part of the staff because they are trying to wring pennies while skipping over dollars.
Yep.
That's the way I'm going to put it right now.
Yep.
That would concern the crap out of me, and that seems to be what it is at the moment. So,
and yeah, if that's true, that would understandably scare away any, coach with a head on his shoulders. Like, why would I want to take this job when I'm going to be hamstrung from the beginning? And they are signaling to me the exact thing which has been said about them, which is that they're not serious about putting money into the program.
Yeah. Westwood Bruins, I know you have input on this. Go ahead, bud.
Hey, Anna, thanks for having me over. Just want to thank you guys for letting me for the opportunity to speak. But are we fucking serious, guys? Like, God, like, just how crappy this shit's become. Just to give a little background, I believe that the process was, from what I've heard, it was going down to the wire where White was a very viable candidate, but Foster had all of the institutional commitment, and even though White was there with that previous coordinating experience, Foster was the one who had that real insight into the program, so that's why they leaned towards that, given the constraints of the finances because of the buyouts. But I just think that I was in a spaces earlier, but everyone was talking about, oh, we don't need 3 stars or we don't need 5 stars. We can develop. Foster's not really recruited like maniacally, but he's a developer. But like, what fucking planet are we on? Like Jim Mora with his hands in his pants with his realtor was getting top 20 recruiting classes. Meanwhile, we can't expect to get anything close to that. Like, we're in a hotbed, and I know that the recruiting has been horrible, but at the very least, we should be able to pull in top 25 recruiting classes with anybody with a pulse. And I'm just worried that with Foster, with all that he's done, he's just going to be a scapegoat for the ineptitude of the athletic department and Chip.
Yeah, I second that. The idea that he would be the fall guy, that it would turn out to be, Foster was, the worst blend of Darrell and Neuheisel, when this falls on its face, and it wouldn't be his fault. Like I that would to me be tragic.
No, completely agreed. I mean, and that actually, and I mean that transitions into the main things that I wanted to say. But I mean, I do have to start with this, and I mean I have to disclaim the things I'm going to say. Nobody here, not a single UCLA fan, hates Deshaun Foster. Not a single one. There is nothing wrong with Deshaun Foster taking an interview in UCLA, offering him a position, and him accepting it, knowing that there is a certain, even if he knows that they are hiring him because they expect him to maintain the course of the program at the moment. Everybody is like, at the end of the day, you can't deny a guy his right to take a job that puts him as the face of the program that he's long been one of kind of the legendary parts of. Everybody wants him to be successful. We're all going to root for him on a visceral level. I don't want to be right about this. I do not want Deshaun Foster to fail. Objectively speaking, based on the way that they have set things up at the moment, where you have an administration that has made it clear that they don't think that things are so wrong that they have to pivot, or that they are willing to burn down years at a time just to avoid paying a couple of relatively minuscule buyouts. You are putting a guy who needs all the support in the world in a position to fail at that point. Because the way that this Deshaun Foster hire works is exactly the way that you described it, Nathan. He is responsible for the culture, things are taken care of on an institutional level in terms of NIL and a commitment to kind of refining the parts of the program that need to be refined. They commit to coordinators with the salary that they've saved from Chip. They commit to high-end coordinators, and they build a program around him. And the school kind of builds it up with him as a figurehead. There is nothing that is going on right now, or no, let me rephrase that because we're pretty early into it, obviously. We're 12 hours removed. The signs are not there that this is something that they want to do. The signs seem to be see no evil, hear no evil. There was nothing wrong with the way that things were going before. Everything was fine. La-di-da-di-da. Chip was just a little bit of a jerk. Foster's going to be nice to everybody. And I don't know, he'll open up spring practice every once in a while, but otherwise things will be the same. Well, if you are not going to commit to the NIL part of this, especially if you're not going to build that around him and you're going to expect him to be the charismatic pitchman who is going to get Patrick Soon-Shiong to throw $5 million into NIL, they have another thing coming if that's even an expectation.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would describe this process, worst case scenario, with some of the same words that I would use to describe the decision making regarding Chip the last couple of years, which is lazy and cowardly. Right? Like, it is easy, it requires the least amount of work, and it is the thing that seems to plug the immediate scary holes in terms of like, oh no, we're going to lose players, or oh no, we're going to have a long search and we're going to look bad. Like, it's talking about. I don't think of it as this was a hire that they wanted to do to win the press conference, as much as this is a hire to avoid the bad press. And again, as a matter of process, that is appalling and discouraging. A silver lining that I will throw out, though, is that the thing that they mentioned the last couple of weeks of broadcasts, is just this idea of, I know they signed him for 5 years, but by taking a lower inexperienced coach, it can be a lower stakes try, and if it doesn't work, you just try again. And obviously that would suck for Deshaun, but this is not a Jimbo Fisher type, sunk money, bad commitment in that regard. Like, they've set it up so that it won't work. Unfortunately, if that comes to fruition, the cost to start over and try again are not as high as they could be.
I mean,
how's that for super optimistic?
Immediate dollars and cents, I think you're right. But long term, if you are thinking, let's say that, let's play this out. In a situation where UCLA, let's say they meet expectations this year, or even let's say they meet expectations this year. Let's say they go something like 4-8, but there is no palpable buzz about the recruiting being built up because there is no institutional commitment to NIL. They still cannibalize the men of Westwood with their stupid wooden athletic fund donor drives and all that kind of stuff. And you don't get the recruiting class that the fan base is hoping for. Because, the thing that got people on board with Jim Mora when he was hired at the time, forget Chip Kelly for a second. He came in with the name. People were going to be on board with him no matter what. But when it came to Jim Mora, there was a lot of skepticism. Hiring him out of an announcing booth or out of a studio and having no college football experience whatsoever. There were a couple things that Jim Mora did that got fans on board. First of all, he made fan engagement a priority. Second of all, he hired college football coaches. He hired Noel Mazzoni. He hired Steve Broussard. I don't know if he got Yarber that exact year. I think he got Yarber as his first wide receivers coach even. I remember Bryce Treggs. Some of you guys, I'm going to need to mute you. I'm sorry. But he did. So there was he hired people that seemed like they knew what they were doing in this arena. And then finally, they took all the momentum with Adrian Clem, with Broussard, with Yarber, all that, and they turned it into recruiting momentum. And hold on one second. I'm sorry. They turned that into recruiting momentum. And then they turned that into wins. They beat Rice, they beat Nebraska. So there was a cascading effect where it seemed like smart people were doing things to build the program in the right direction. With Foster, if you are keeping the same coaches who were doing not a lot right before, and you can say that it's Chip Kelly's fault and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, if they are not empowered to get out there and recruit, and what that takes at this point is NIL, not personality. If you don't give them the resources to recruit, if you don't hire the best people like a Lou Spanos or a Noel Mazzoni in that moment to build up the players that you have, and you don't create that palpable buzz of things are trending in the right direction, there's not going to be at any point at which people want to get back on this train. And if you're talking about like, lower tier diehards or upper tier casuals, when are they going to have that moment where it's like, you know what, I kind of let go of UCLA for a while, but I'm going to get back on board right now because I see where this is going and I like it. I think you have a chance, if it hasn't happened already, to lose those people permanently. So if you're talking about a cycle of hire, rehire, all that kind of stuff till it finally works, when you get to the point where it finally works, how many people, how many students who become alums, who become rich people to feed back into that cycle of donations and NIL and all that kind of stuff, are you really going to have on board and in hand for that moment to capitalize when you get that right hire? So even if you want to talk about this in terms of, it's just a shot in the dark, they can change and they can pivot after 2-3 years. Who is going to be posting on message boards? Who's going to be tweeting about this program? Who's going to be at the games? Is it going to be enough people to have a critical mass that you can build up to get behind somebody who ends up being worthy of the job? And that's why I think about this, not just in terms of Deshaun. I don't think about this just in terms of Martin Jarman. You have to think long-term with this stuff, and the amount of good faith that's already been lost with the fan base that might never be recovered unless the shot in the dark works right now. If you have spent 10 years not giving a damn about UCLA football because there's no reason to give a damn about it, what's going to be the thing in that 11th year that makes you think, you know what, I've really been missing out for these last 10 years. This is the thing that I really want to do with my time again. Nathan, does that make any sense at all?
It does. I will say this, and this is not specifically what you're talking about, because you're talking about if and when this doesn't work and then going through this process again. But, whatever level of fan you want to call me, I'm sure, longtime listeners will have various opinions, that my first instinct, again, when I saw this hire, was I immediately went to Redfin and started sending my wife properties in Southern California again. So but there is something to be said, at least temporarily, spiking interest and engagement in the program again, from the fact that, the more I think about it, the reason we don't do this podcast, weekly anymore is because Chip broke me. I just could not bring myself to get the energy to talk anymore about this football program with which I was disgusted. And, this broke that, or this fixed that, at least temporarily. And so before I bail tonight, because it is, 11 o'clock my time, but I'll let you guys keep chatting about this. I will just say again that, like, there are lots of ways this could not work. For my own enjoyment and for the joy that it gets out, for not ruining that for myself, I'm going to hold off on being angry until it doesn't work. Knowing full well all the ways it couldn't happen, I'm going to celebrate this, even if it's not the process, but just the fact of it, for as long as the evidence and the facts on the ground will let me.
No, and that's fair. I mean, the one thing I was going to mention when you're talking about properties and all that kind of stuff, like, I don't think that there are many people in the world that have the devotion to Deshaun Foster that you do. I mean, and I know you realize that, but yes. For just the casual fan, I'm not saying that you need to win the press conference, because I think the press conference is the most irrelevant part of any process. I mean, I can think back to plenty of coaches in different arenas who have won the press conference and they've been utter failures. But at the end of the day, I just don't. Anyway,
when I think of the phrase
that's going to catalyze fans,
when I think of the phrase "win the press conference," the immediate association, the Freudian, Jungian, whatever immediate psychological association is New York Mets, and that's never a place you want to be.
There are a lot of parallels between UCLA and the New York Mets, but anyway.
Oh, jeez.
But anyway.
Anyway, you guys keep chatting about this. I'm sure there's lots of folks that have more interesting things to say than I do. But before I check out, at least, thank you all for tuning in and caring enough to hear, what these two idiots have to say, about our shared favorite team. Go Bruins and good night.
Good night, buddy. Good night. All right. So, let me mute Nathan. Did he jump up? I hear somebody's speaker. Hold on one sec. I think it's David, actually. David, I need to mute you. I'm sorry. So, anyway, there's a couple things that I want to throw out there first before I get to talking to anybody who's lined up to speak here. I know we got Terrible Tal, we got Andreas, we got David lined up. Westwood Bruins is sticking around. I know I'm going to hear from him a little bit later as well. There's a couple things to this. I mean, first things first, if you have an idea that you need to make a continuity hire, or you have a desire to make a continuity hire, or you are going to reach the point that you are making a continuity hire, what in the world is this private jet nonsense about touring the Southwestern United States and getting to spend a free night in Cabo? Like, I don't understand what the point of that Sturm und Drang was, that the song and dance. Going to talk to PJ Fleck, going to talk to Jed Fish, talking to Brent Brennan, supposedly being on a plane to see Troy Taylor, and then, hiring Deshaun in the meantime. Like, we know that these were discussions that took place in level of seriousness and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. We can deal with that on a later date. But if this is what was going to happen, if there was even an inkling that this is what was going to happen, why are you enabling an athletic director that you don't believe in to build something by mandating that he's going to make a continuity hire? Why are you giving him the leeway to just hop on private jets all over all over a region of the U.S. and Mexico for a weekend? I don't really understand that. All right, I just need to get that off my chest because it's just the weirdest thing that they did all that, and then it was Sean Foster at the end of the day. The main thing here, the biggest thing is that when you look at when I look at it, I can't say when I look at this from just a 50,000 foot perspective, the message that this sends is that UCLA football is it is going to commit to being minor league for the foreseeable future. Whether that is an edict of Gene Block, who told Martin Jarmond, you are not dealing with this, or I don't have the patience to deal with this, just put a Band-Aid over it in the meantime, or it's Martin Jarmond genuinely believing that this was the best way out. I cannot believe that anybody looked at this from an objective perspective and thought to themselves, the ship is perfectly fine. It's sailing smoothly. We just need somebody with a little bit of a steadier hand. And we don't really care if that person has any experience leading a large group of people, or whether they have the personality for it in 2024 in the modern era of college football, or whether they have any ability to excel in donor relations whatsoever, or X's and O's chops. Like, I want to find the selling point for this that wasn't he was on the staff before and he knows UCLA, because that is not a reason to hire somebody. If you have somebody who's a qualified candidate who also cares about the program and is an alum, that's wonderful. That's great. That's why I was an avid supporter of Tony White's candidacy, for example. You could have even convinced me of Brent Brennan, even though that would have been super meh, but that would have been way better than this, in my opinion, where I sit right now. But there is nobody who has been able to give me a cogent argument, a theory of the case for Deshaun Foster beyond the players wanted him, and he is a UCLA legend, and he was on the staff. Literally, I've heard no other points. And to the extent that I have heard them, if I have heard them, they've been so unworthy of consideration as to be completely and immediately dismissed in my mind, and I just can't recall them in this moment. Because for me, that being the case, I can't get there right now. You cannot convince me that this is the move that is going to put UCLA on a course to, I don't even care about being Alabama or LSU or something like that, to make UCLA a respectable program that looks like it's professionally run, like it's run by adults. Because right now, there is nothing to suggest that UCLA, any of the hands at the wheels of the athletic department, are steady hands who know where they want to send this thing. They seem to be so afraid of their own shadows and, oh no, we might actually have to get involved with athletics, or oh no, we might actually make this football program good. Like, I know that's not what they're thinking, but they are thinking of it as an inconvenience rather than an opportunity. And like something to just hand off and be done with it. It doesn't speak well to Martin Jarmond. It doesn't speak well to the 1.4 million to 1.6 million. I forget the exact number that they're paying him. It doesn't speak well to the amount that they're paying him. You don't pay somebody that amount over a multi-year contract to just be, hey, make the safe hire. There had to have been at some point a remit for Jarman to remake the program as a visionary. Because if you wanted just somebody to be a suit in a seat, you could have paid way less for that. Way less. And so at that point, that tells me that Martin Jarmond has seriously lost the trust and the confidence of the people above him. But then at that point, you can't put the hire in his hands. I don't care if Chip abandoned you in whatever hour. Make it an interim at that point. Or if you're going to hire Foster with the idea that he's an interim, the buyout better be something that is 2 to 3 million maximum. You make it an easy thing to overcome in the next couple of years when a new chancellor comes in and they bring in their own athletic director. Otherwise, I mean, I cannot put together a theory of the case that makes any of this make sense if you are trying to push this in a direction to where you are going to have a happy or even optimistic or hopeful general fan base. There are going to be hardcores who are going to be on board with this, but you are not going to convince me that the general high level casual to low tier diehard is going to think to themselves, "Oh wow, I see that this is going in the right direction. I'm going to hop on board now." That kind of honeymoon Mora feeling. I know it's possible because I was there for the honeymoon Mora feeling, the honeymoon Mora phase. It was a real thing. It was awesome. We all enjoyed it. He never won more than 10 games. We still enjoyed it because we thought it was going somewhere. So anyway, that's me ranting. West Bruins, you've had your hand up. I'm going to let you go. Then I'm going to get to Armand. I'm going to get to Connell and Terrible. So anyway, Western Bruins, my friend, go for it.
I think you hit the spot on the head. I think that, friend of the program, Matthew Royer, just tweeted out a little bit ago. If you guys aren't following him, follow him for the Daily Bruin, support journalism. But he tweeted out that the regions are having a meeting convening on the chancellor tomorrow. And, you got to think that Jarman is hamstrung by the um, the administration, those above him, particularly Gene Block. In all of his tweeting today, a very active tweeter, Gene Block hasn't said anything about the hire of Deshaun Foster, and I think that just shows you that he doesn't care about athletics at all. But I think that, going back behind the scenes a little bit, Jarmond, he approached Block for an extension, and Block didn't want to give it to him because he wanted the next chancellor to have his choice. But if you're making that decision at that point, why are you going to have the person, like you said, Hannah, have that person be who's in charge of this process? And I think that, we need to realize the process and the results are two separate things. The process that it took to get Chip Kelly was a great process. He was the hottest commodity on the market at the time, and he was the one who had all the options but chose us. In this circumstance, we had little leverage, and we had some buyouts, but they weren't significant enough. And if it was true that donor funds were rallying the horses to get the funds to possibly go for Jed Fish or others, these smaller buyouts of these assistant coaches shouldn't have mattered. So I think that it really does reflect on the power or the limitations that Jarman had, in the situation. But at that point, like you said, it's like, why would you have him making these decisions that are gonna, you know, affect the future of the athletics program for years to come? He came in during COVID and he was still in a crappy situation, but this this debt that has been there hasn't been resolved. And it's looking like the Big Ten's going to be the lifeline to the program, just providing the safety and the monetary value. But with what fan enthusiasm is there actually going to be something to build upon? And I love Deshaun Foster. He's a great coach, and he's done a lot for the program. But there's there's issues where the staff that's in place doesn't have that directive to recruit like maniacally, like how Oregon or even how Fish did at at University of Arizona, and I just question what is going to change in the situation that's going to get them to recruit, because all of this is just a people person game. You need to talk to the recruits. You need to be there. You need to give them a plan of what the vision is for NIL and how things are going for the program. How are you going to sell it? But with the staff in place, what are you going to do with three open vacancies? You know, with Norton being gone, with um, Coach Ken going to San Jose State, and then obviously with Chip being gone, who's he going to fill? I think that an offensive coordinator position is the most important hire he can make right now. And I think that he should really target someone who's up and coming, who's run a successful offense, but someone who's going to excite people. And I think that number one on that list should be Brendan Marion, the UNLV offensive coordinator. But I don't think he takes this job. You know, there's a 5-year contract, but until we see the buyout terms, what is the stability going to be like? Because in Marion's eyes, he could get an OC job at a much bigger and better Power 2 team, and what's the incentive for him to go here, especially if we, as we perceive it to be a sinking ship. If there's a low buyout in his contract, then it's not going to be attractive. But who's it going to be attractive to? Then you're going to have to take a shot on a less experienced coordinator or someone who hasn't run anything successful in years. So it's just very troubling signs. But I think that, overall, everything is taken from the top. And if Foster just proves to just bring back some of the traditions, bring back the victory bell, and do all the little details of calling the recruits and actually going to have official visits at the Rose Bowl and all of these little things, I think he can build the fan consensus. And as fans, we can do a better job of supporting Men of Westwood. It's not a perfect system at how it is right now, but the best we can do is try to support our team no matter what. And I think by donating Men of Westwood, we can do a little part in that.
It's an interesting one. Obviously, I know that you know what you're talking about on this because you and I have talked. I know the roles you've had and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the thing that's interesting to me with Deshaun is that if you're gonna try to say that you're going the alumni route and kind of just the relating to the fans and all that, you had somebody there in Tony White who is just as much of an alum, not as much of a legend, but you had somebody who had coordinator chops, probably could have taken over the defense, could have sold the fact that he's taking over the defense and there was an offensive coordinator. As an offensive coordinator, whoever he was going to hire would have kind of free reign over that side of the ball. And then somebody who is more proven as a recruiter and more known as a personality to get that out there with donors and build up that NIL infrastructure. With Deshaun, because he is a little more soft spoken, that's not a bad thing. In real life, that's an awesome thing. In fact, a guy who's a little more kind of considered in what he does, a guy who's more thoughtful in the way that he approaches things. In real life, that's great. In modern college football, you need somebody who it's pointing in the direction. You need somebody who's going to be a little more raw and have direct donor engagement, unless the school is so committed to an NIL process that they're going to build that up for you. They're going to take care of that for you so you can take care of what's on the field, the way that Texas A&M did it for Jimbo Fisher, for example. Now, obviously, that didn't work, but that was an example of putting your money where your mouth is and actually doing the things to kind of get out there, give the coach the best chance to succeed. Unless the school is going to take care of that for Deshaun, or there is a side of Deshaun Foster that we don't know about, I don't know where the NIL money is going to come from. And you can hire banshees in recruiting at that point. You could hire a staff with Adrian Clem, Tosh Lapoy, and Coach Meat, and go down the list. And I don't think it's going to make a difference because these recruits, you might get one or two recruits who respond to you on a visceral, personal level. But the way that NIL works right now, I believe that most recruits are not going to consider UCLA unless they have an NIL. I don't think I'm saying anything that's out of turn here, or like groundbreaking necessarily. I don't think most recruits of a certain caliber are going to consider UCLA unless they believe that UCLA can take care of them long term. And so, I'm very interested to see what they do with Deshaun and the way they build around him, or the side of him that he kind of unleashes that we just have not had exposure to. Either of those routes are the only ways that I could see this working. Because if there is that commitment to NIL anything else is on the table in college football in 2024. If they don't have a plan either with him or around him to make the NIL numbers semi-competitive, again, not Texas A&M, not Louisville, not Tennessee or anything like that, just, mid-level Big Ten to where recruits feel like, hey, UCLA is calling me. It's worth taking the call. If you don't even get into that sphere, then at that point, these are sunk years. This is really just a program that's on a hiding to nowhere. But I'm going to be very interested to see what they do with the NIL aspect, how it's structured, and how well done it is. Armand, sir, I'm going to jump directly to you because if you are who I think you are, I know that you've got a whole lot to say about this, and you're going to have insights a lot of us are not going to have. So please, sir, go for it. I'd love to hear from you.
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Yeah, I just got a few things to say. He's dead spot on Coach Marion. But Coach Marion comes, I just spoke with him an hour ago. So he's hoping and waiting on a phone call to come to UCLA. So that
That would be
part
amazing.
I can confirm. I just don't know what the UCLA fan base wants. Whether that's alumni, whether that's boosters. My son is actually a freshman in the program right now,
Yes.
graduated early to come there. Um, the NLI, we might as well stop talking about that. It's just not there. And that has to come from the deep pocket people, the
Yep.
Wassermans, and so and so. And if they weren't willing to give Chip Kelly that, why would they give Deshaun Foster or anybody else that? The benefit of hiring Deshaun Foster is he is an alumni, so he can reach out to the alumni base and look for that kind of support financially. You Let's just be real. UCLA, everybody's on this call. UCLA doesn't care about football.
Yeah,
I,
I mean, there's that is definitely the sentiment that's very deep rooted, and based on what we've seen from Men of Westwood, this is a fan base that is checked out and needs to be revitalized. I fully agree with you on that.
my son from 2013 to 2017, Chris Hawkins played at USC. So I've been to I can't tell you how many UCLA games. Like sitting in the stands with my son as a recruit and watching 8,000 people in the Rose Bowl, like that's embarrassing.
Yeah,
It's totally embarrassing. And the only time we come close to filling up the Rose Bowl, and that's because it's USC fans, is when we play USC.
yeah.
So we have to fix the situations in house. Coach wise, Deshaun is going to recruit. He might is not a public figure that's outgoing and screaming out loud at the microphones. But when you know him, like I do, he recruits his ass off. He recruits Orange County. He recruits Mater Dei. He recruits everywhere. He communicates very well, the whole 9 yards, and he tells the truth, right? So
Mm.
at some point, UCLA has to have a person that tells the truth. I fell in love with Chip Kelly until he did what he did. Um, and he left us stuck, right? Who can you go out and hire right now? I mean, we're finna start practicing in a little while.
Yep.
So who's gonna come in here and take this job, knowing that they don't have NLI deals set up? No, Deshaun was the best thing that they could do.
And
Period.
that's my hope is that there is a plan for NIL going forward. Because sir, I think you agree with me. NIL is the name of the game right now. Is that right?
Absolutely correct.
Yep. So, I mean, at that point, that is the biggest thing, and that is the thing that I mean, I have my doubts about the fact that they are directly addressing NIL, and I've had no reason to believe it over the years. Right, you're not going to make a home run hire in February. There's no doubt about that. I mean,
Correct.
nobody here was going to be deluded enough to think so. The alumni engagement is going to be the biggest part of the head coach's job. They are going to have to work that CEO part of the job to the nines, and it's just going to have to be something where they kill it with the alumni base. And I fully agree with you on that. That is going to be the biggest part of whether this works or whether there's a viable football for a future for UCLA football in general, I think. Do you think that's
Right.
fair to say?
Yeah, and it's just not about getting boatloads and boatloads of money. I think right now my son, whatever they have in place, he gets $7,500 is the NLI they have, and they have to participate in a couple camps and autograph signatures. $7,500. These kids around here getting $250,000. Washington's recruiting corps last year, each one of them made 200,000.
Mm.
So,
Yep.
like, if I'm a receiver, why would I come to UCLA? Like, for what? My son can come to UCLA. It's close to home. My other son played at USC, so I've been there. Other son is actually the recruiting coordinator assistant at UW right now.
Mm.
So my family breathes football. So it's easy for us to come to UCLA. It's at home,
Yep.
right? And he has a chance to play right away. But we have to figure out money. It's not about the coach. It's not about nothing else. You get the kids when you get the money. You don't get the money, you're not gonna get the elite kids.
Yep.
Look at our recruiting
Mis-
class. What do we have? Chris is a 4-star on Rivals. He's a 3-star on Scout. And the lineman from Mission Viejo is a 4-star. And what after that?
Yep. No, Mr. Hawkins, preach. You are absolutely 100% right. And I think everybody here would echo what you're saying. A huge topic of discussion amongst the people that I've been talking to today has been surrounding the fact that UCLA has to have a focus on getting its NIL right. And that's one of the reasons why we have been so interested in the personality of the head coach and what that coach is able to do in terms of donor relations, just as much as recruit relations. Because I think that one of the reasons why there were a significant group of UCLA fans who were kind of enthusiastic about somebody like Tony White, for example, the Nebraska defensive coordinator, is because he is somebody who has operated with a bigger budget at other schools like in Nebraska that does commit its resources, and he would kind of push in that regard. And he's known to have, or considered to have, more of an outgoing personality in that regard. But the nature of the personality doesn't matter to me. If you can connect with alumni, you can connect with an alumni, and that's going to be the biggest thing that a head coach needs to do in terms of culture change, in my opinion. What do you make of that?
Right. You're absolutely correct. But that's all I have. I don't want to hold up you guys' night, but I'm sitting here listening and I'm like, we need some money. Period. You need
Agreed.
some money. I mean,
Yep.
you're not even going to get the good level transfer portal kids because, if you got, think about it, you got coaches running from head coaching jobs to take coordinator jobs because they
Mm-hmm.
don't want to deal with the NIL stuff.
Yep.
That's sad. The day of football is over with. And we should be the top dog instead of USC. You look at our campus. Look at everything. We're in Westwood. Look at what we have to offer. Like we're playing the stepchild to USC, and we should be, the main person.
That is the exact ambition that I have. There's no reason that in a world where you have a committed UCLA with the donor base or with the alumni base that it has, with the location, with everything that it has going for it in terms of natural advantages, this is the argument that I've made forever. How many billionaire and millionaire UCLA alumni are there out there?
Exactly.
Who's going to beat the living in Westwood? You have Beverly Hills, you have West Side of LA around you, just kind of the nicest parts of LA around you. You have that weather that you can sell every day. You have the proximity to recruits, and I can go on and on and on. This should be a plum job. This should be a top tier job that attracts the best of the best. If there was a vision for making it happen, and so I mean, and that's the biggest thing about the Foster hire for me. If there is a vision for how to proceed with making the NIL part of it work, whether it's going to be Deshaun knowing that he can get out there and build it up himself, which is pure grinding and kind of person to person relations, or whether there is an infrastructure that the athletic department is going to invest in where they are not going to prioritize wooden athletic fund donations to the school anymore, or where they are going to actually direct donors to give it to the players instead, or whatever it happens to be. NIL is everything in college football at this point. And if they don't have a plan for around Deshaun for how to make that work, it is not going to work. So as long as they have some sort of plan for NIL, I am actually willing to give this a chance. I just not based on the fact that they are emphasizing retaining certain assistants and mandating it and all that kind of stuff. I just can't see where that's going to go. But regardless, NIL, just to emphasize. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Really do appreciate your
All
time,
right, you
sir. Is
guys
there
have a
anything else
good
you want
night.
to add?
No, you guys have a good night. Go Bruins.
Go Bruins. Thank you, sir. All right. Terrible towel. Go for it. I know you've been waiting.
Hey, Michael. So I'm an East Coast Bruin, and I don't understand the university, how the perception right now of how cheap UCLA is. The number of messages I am getting from alumni from schools all over the country, friends and coworkers, and just wondering what is wrong with UCLA. How can they be operating where they're losing their coaches, to an Ohio State as a coordinator? They can't buy out anybody. They can't. There is this a poverty school? And then wait a second, you're in Westwood. You have quite a few affluent alums. You're ranked the number one public school. But does Gene Block and do these people understand the perception, the negative marketing that this does to their school? I mean, and as an alumni, it hurts, and it's really pathetic that we are operating like we are good, like a UC, Davis, or who knows, UC Merced. And hopefully we can get a chancellor who understands that you can't, this is such a negative perception of your school now. I don't think they understand the brand damage that they are doing, and the ESPNs and whoever else laughing at UCLA. It is not good. And the sad thing is, with Foster, I feel like they're setting him up to fail, because Deshaun Foster is the guy who, you've got to hit it right on a offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. What makes a Dan Lanning, or the guy who went to ASU, or somewhere else? You get someone who can at least be good on one side of the ball. You at least say, all right, our offense is going to be good. Now let's roll the dice on, X coordinator at the other position. Now we're in the Darrell world, where we've got to hope and pray you get an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator. Come on, we've all been down this path. This is likely not, very, very likely not to work out, and they're setting up Foster for a failure. But I think our only chance at really ever getting out of this doldrums is a real chancellor and somebody who's not promoted from UCLA. That's my hope. All right, I'm out, guys.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate it. I mean, I definitely take your point as far as perceptions of UCLA. I don't think anybody here is going to disagree with you on that. I will say one thing about Gene Block. Gene Block has never pretended to be interested in UCLA football beyond a social media post or two. He's always made it clear that his priority is the medical school and the medical side of things. And in a sense, I don't blame him for that, because I mean, if you look at the athletic budget versus the revenue that's generated by the medical center, I mean, the athletic budget is dwarfed by everything that goes on the research side and on the medical side for UCLA. So I mean, UCLA is a wider institution. Has way bigger ventures than athletics, but there is an undeniable fact that regardless of what money the medical center brings in, or from patents, research, all that kind of stuff, the most forward-facing part of the university, the most public-facing part of the university, the greatest marketing opportunity that exists for the university, and they are the nation's leader in applications and blah, blah, blah. I get all this. UCLA has a high profile. They don't need more marketing in their minds. It's a very closed-minded thing. What is wrong with more, though? The greatest marketing opportunity, the greatest perception maker that UCLA has, because it's the most forward-facing thing that exists on the college paradigm, is a successful Division I college football program. I mean, if the greatest investment Alabama ever made was Nick Saban, according to their old chancellor. And UCLA doesn't need to be promoted on an academic level the same way that Alabama did, for example. But at the same time, it never hurts to have even more. And it builds more of a kind of communal campus culture. The more you have people who think that sports are a building block for building an identity of kind of shared Bruindom in a sense. So The idea that football could be considered in any way an inconvenience rather than an opportunity to be built up is so short-sighted in my mind. And anybody who needs to be convinced of that is not somebody who should be in a job where you are trying to oversee a global operation, in my opinion. You have to consider all factors, not just, oh, overall revenue, this makes more, I'm going to pay more attention to this because I like it more. It's just, you're missing the forest for the trees at that point. It is such a lost opportunity the way that UCLA has treated things in the recent past. But at the end, I mean, I hope it changes. That's all I can say. Everybody here wants it to work. Nobody's coming in here to inherently criticize and put people down. I don't like it. I wouldn't want people to do it at my work. I have a job. I understand what it's like to have pressure and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what it's like to have the public focus that these guys have to deal with. There's no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, it comes with it's part of the territory. There's a reason why Martin Jarman gets paid 1 point whatever million. There's a reason why Chip Kelly got paid 5 some million, why Deshaun's probably going to make in the range of 3 to 4, because the money's meant to compensate you for the loss of your kind of private identity. And the fact that it is so high profile and has a direct tie to revenue generation. All this stuff, going back to one of my favorite shows, maybe my favorite show ever, The Wire, I remember Lester Freeman, he would always say, all the pieces matter. And they do. With UCLA football, with UCLA athletics, even if you want to make the argument that there are parts of UCLA that dwarf UCLA athletics, the athletic program is the face of any top tier university that has an athletic program. There's a reason why UCLA isn't Tufts. There's a reason why UCLA isn't Middlebury College. The reason is because there's a person named John Wooden who existed at some point. Athletics matter on a true national scope type of level. Athletics matter. And if they do matter, if there is a university that has seen as direct a knock-on impact from athletics as UCLA, and there are people there who still think to themselves, we are going to nickel and dime our way through this thing, those are people who have no vision, no ability to execute on anything, no reason to believe that they are true leaders in any sense of leadership. That's just my opinion. So at that point, it's just, I don't know what else to say about it beyond that, because it's very frustrating to believe that there are people at UCLA who could be so cynical, if this is the case, to hire Deshaun Foster and take a legend of the program and then potentially hang him out to dry. If you are going to toy with fans' emotions like that, we hired an absolute local legend, a UCLA legend like Deshaun Foster. You better build him up, because if you are going to make him if there's anything done to make him a fall guy, how can you ever trust the people that are in charge ever again? So Deshaun Foster, I believe, will have the goodwill of the fan base for as long as he is the coach of UCLA. And it's going to be on the people around him to make sure that his strengths are accentuated, his weaknesses are covered up for, and he is allowed to be a leader of men, because that's going to be his biggest strength. The fact that people, that once they do get in the locker room, will gravitate to him. They have to have a mechanism to deliver him that talent, though. So anyway, very long soapbox again. My apologies for that. Travis, go ahead, man, and then Kunal, we're going to get to you.
The question I have, though, is about the chancellor. We on a previous spaces that James Williams gives a couple months ago, and the exciting rumor was maybe someone like a Condoleezza Rice being a chancellor for us and things of that nature. But what are the people hearing? What are we hearing about? Because I remember Chancellor Young. I'm 52 years old, man. I go back to when Chancellor Young and cared and was out at games, and he was very vocal and a cheerleader. Dude was walking around and and meeting people and talking to people and pumped up about UCLA football back in the day, and I remember that kind of stuff. So if you have any kind of inkling or where this is possibly going, because that is the hire of the new chancellor is just as important to me as the hiring of a new offensive coordinator for Deshaun Foster. It's just, we need somebody who actually looks at, hey, this is this is a money generator thing, and we can continue to build up our campus, through, through the sports. I mean, by supporting our sports. I mean, you look at that. You look at the campus in South, South LA. I mean, look how it went from the late '90s into the mid 2000s after they went to X many BCS games. I mean, that neighbor. I grew up in that neighborhood, so I watched it change, and see how the area kind of got built up because of the influx of money coming in from BCS bowl games, and constantly playing on New Year's Day and stuff like that, when that kind of stuff mattered and things. So I'm just listen. I want to listen, but I do. If anybody has any kind of inkling of who the chancellor at UCLA, who they're looking at, who's in the running, I would like to hear it. And definitely, last thing I would say is that, even for me, because I've been probably, outside of you, Mike, I've probably been the most vocal person, about getting rid of Chip. I've been wanting to get rid of Chip since 2020, since the COVID year, and I know COVID saved them to me, and it's just, because I at that period, at 10 and 21, I was like, okay, it's done. This is not going to work. And and even with the improvements and the wins, I kept seeing slips, and games that we should never have lost, we lose, and things. It's just no way in hell that the record should be what it is the last 2 years with the record. I mean, the schedule that we have had, it should never have been what we 9 losses in the last 2 years. There ain't no way in hell we should have had 9 losses in the last 2 years with the schedule we had.
Agreed.
It's insane, dude. It's insane. But I would take it offline. I just wanted to hear, who, maybe if anybody had a thought of who's the chancellor is going to be.
No, I mean, it's a great point because, I mean, leadership stems from the top. I mean, that's the CEO of the university right there. So if there is somebody who is going to come in as chancellor, similar to what you described with Young, and have a vision for how to build a football as a true global, national, whatever you want to call it, in scope marketing tool of the university, I'd be obviously all for it. I mean, I would have nothing against it. I'd be very enthusiastic about it, in fact, because I mean, at that point, that would be somebody who who kind of sees things for what they are and the potential for what it is. And if you have that vision, it will filter down at that point, because if you have people who are reporting up to that chancellor who are not executing on that vision, it would be summarily dealt with at that point. So I think it all does flow from the top in a sense. And Gene Block has never made any pretense about the idea that he really just does not care about athletics. But I mean, I can't speak to anything that was built up around USC at that time, because I've made it a point never to go near that campus, but just bad experience. I'll just put it that way. But during a game, got into it with USC fans at a UCLA USC game. Anyway, the point is that, yeah, what you mentioned happened to USC as a result of the Pete Carroll era was absolutely correct, and it was a substantial overhaul in USC alumni pride, donations to the school. If I remember correctly, it was either Steve Sample or Max Nikias. They built their entire fundraising drive for the university as a whole off the back of the success of USC football. And UCLA obviously has had its own fundraising drive recently. They have done just fine, but there hasn't been a university that I know of that hasn't wanted more, hasn't wanted to go bigger, hasn't had more grand designs and scope. And what USC did with football, in the idea, and obviously Trojan football has always been ingrained in USC fans. USC being a private school, has always had a little bit more to kind of has always put more of an emphasis on the idea of the quote unquote Trojan family as opposed to a public school like UCLA, a lot wider of an alumni base. It's kind of easier to get lost in the shuffle in a sense. But regardless of that, you have UCLA's biggest donors to both basketball and football are still the ones who remember the John Wooden era, who still take pride in the idea of I am a UCLA Bruin as opposed to I went to UCLA. Those are two completely and wildly divergent sentiments. And if you just as on a conceptual level, what is an athletic department if not what it's evolved into a resource for campus pride and campus marketing. If you're not fully executing on what that can be, you are depriving your students of part of the college experience of enjoying the benefits of a good athletic program if it is there to be had, and you are depriving yourself of a marketing tool. The idea to me that there are people who will actively say to themselves, I'm going to take the easy way out of doing the cheapest thing to have the greatest return on investing in a football program where you put in a couple million. If you paid Nick Saban $10 million and you get back $300 million in donations, is that not a hell of an investment? The idea to me that there's anybody who could argue that football should not be a central part of your university's marketing plans, it's just insane to me. But regardless, that's where it seems like we are with UCLA on some levels. But
Mike, I
we
was
hope
gonna
it
say, Mike,
changes.
to the part. I was gonna say to that point. I listened to an interview today, or just yeah today, with Nick Saban. He was talking about NIL and things, and and I was like, wow. I wonder if that's one of the reasons why he got out. But there was also in that same interview they were running numbers of his impact, the impact of Nick Saban had to Alabama and as far as out of state schools. I mean, out of state students coming to that school. And we all know that if you're an in-state student, you pay one thing. If you're an out-of-state student, it's like triple, quadrupled. The funds that go to those schools and things, and that's what was happening with Alabama. Everybody wanted to be part of the party down south and everything when he was winning, all the national titles and things of that nature, and everybody wanted to be part of the game. So, the impact that he had on the university itself, I mean, money wise, I mean, I think they counted that like he might have made like something like 160, $170 million over the time that he's been there. But how much money did the school make? And out of state tuition and and all the football games, being sold out and waiting lists as long as my arm and thing, so it's just it's insane. It's insane that that we don't have the buy-in from our administration like
It's
that. I mean,
short-sighted. It's
it's
incredibly short-sighted.
it's
It's
insane,
pinching
isn't it?
pennies while walking over dollars. It's wild. But anywho,
Just
regardless of that, I do. Travis, thank you. I'm not trying to cut you off. My apologies on that. But to kind of just echoing your idea, I just have to say it. What this kind of space has kind of turned into was kind of a longer term, like a bigger picture projection of things, and that's something that I like to indulge in, just because I enjoy thinking about this kind of stuff. But if we want to bring it back to the immediate thing, where we're talking about Deshaun Foster and what he can do at UCLA, if you want it, the best thing you can do for your university, if you have a legendary figure at the head of the football program, is to spend the money, to direct the money, to build him up. There is an argument to be made that if Deshaun Foster is successful as the UCLA football coach, you will never have to worry about football again, because that man is not going to go anywhere. He is going to be an absolute king at UCLA. He would never leave for another job. He loves the program. He loves the university. He loves the area. He's a local guy. I'm from South Orange County, or not South Orange County. I'm from Middle Orange County, Irvine. He's from Tustin. That's my boy right there. One of the first Bruins I ever watched when I was growing up. I absolutely adore the guy. I don't think he would go anywhere if he was a successful UCLA football coach. He is the kind of guy who would have staying power if he were successful. If you have all those things that are potentially on the table, if you just do things in a professional and outwardly visionary manner, wouldn't you want to do those things? Anyway, that's the reason why I've allowed this to evolve into such a wider picture discussion about the university is because it fits into what they need to do to make the Deshaun Foster era work, just like it would with any coach, but especially with him. If you are going to go with the beloved alumni route, it has to be something where you make that guy, you have to emphasize that person's ability to tie all the threads of the narrative between university and program together. If you are not doing that, you are missing such a gigantic opportunity, even more than you already are otherwise, if you are doing the whole penny pinching thing, the way that UCLA has done to date. They did a good job helping out Jim Mora when Jim Mora showed a modicum of success. They built that building. They paid him to a level that was top 15 public schoolish, roughly. They invested in Adrian Clem especially, and in Coach Meat when they were at UCLA. Obviously, both of them left in different circumstances. That's not here to be discussed at the moment. We're not going to talk about that part of it. Chip, they invested in his nutrition program. They invested in his salary. They put into place the things that he wanted at the start of his tenure. The moment a high-profile hire that they went all in on started not to work, the same old UCLA came back out. And at that point, that's the thing that really bothers me, the idea that UCLA's administration on some subconscious level feels like it flew too close to the sun and it got burned. But we're going to see with time the way that things work out. I just know the way that I think it has to go for it to work out. I have my suspicions about the way that it's going to go. I want to be wrong. I desperately want to be wrong because a good UCLA under Deshaun Foster is something that will really, really get the fan base humming again. If you squander that opportunity, it's a whole other thing. So, anywho, Kanal and then Alex, I'll come to you guys. So Kanal, Kanal, Moore, and then Alex. Alex, Jack is requesting. It's going to be in that order. I'm going to limit each of you to a minute and a half. My apologies. I have a hard stop at 9 p.m. But I do want to give you guys all the chance to speak. So, Kanal, go for it, man.
Can you hear me? Everything's good?
I can hear you, I think, yeah.
Okay. Hello.
What's up?
Man, just listening to everybody, especially with Armand. I hope it's true that the OC from UNLV is interested into UCLA. I hope that was posted on Twitter. Someone retweeted it to some of the important leadership at UCLA. I hope they take heed, and I hope they contact the young man. I think it will be a great opportunity for UCLA to contact and have an interview and see what happens. Like you said before, that UCLA needs to provide the money to, one, build the staff, but also build the NIL. Obviously, I'm just a UCLA fan since I was like 9 years old, for the dumbest reasons, for the colors and the cheerleaders. And now,
both of which are awesome. I can't blame you on either of those. So roll with it, man. Go for it.
And now I just turned 40. I continue to be a psychopath for UCLA. I damn near had a panic attack during the Ben Howland coup. If you know what the Ben Howland coup is, look up the SI situation. That was a heartbreaker. And then to see them hire Steve Alford was also a double down on just like, what the fuck? And we had to go through that hellscape. And then they just stumbled, bumbled, and fumbled. Well, not even fumbled, just walked into Mick Cronin. UCLA football then had what? They went the cheap route and hired Carl Durrell. Again, at that time, I thought Durrell was a good hire. But again, I wasn't very aware of just what is a good football coach and thought it was going to work out. He had a 10-win season. He almost won the conference. Chip Kelly hasn't even gotten close to what I thought was the worst coach at UCLA. Then, Durrell was fired for obvious reasons. It was too late when it came to recruiting. He got aggressive when it was just too late, where Pete Carroll was just hot. It's just the way it is. Pete Carroll got hot. and he can do no wrong. Neuheisel, again, punting is winning. Whew, again, not Neuheisel, from everything I've read and heard, dude was a recruiter, but again, he couldn't build his staff because UCLA did not provide him with the money. He had to go to either alumni or hire gentlemen that didn't really have that much of a California connection, and he got let go. And then for some odd reason, I don't know how it happened. Who cares? But someone inferred to Dan, like, hey, give this guy a opportunity. And his name was Jim Mora. Don't call me Junior. And he rewarded UCLA fans who were just desperate for anything for, I think it was like consecutive 10-win seasons. And then I don't know what happened. This lost his focus. He fell off, and he got fired on his fucking birthday. It doesn't tell you what UCLA would do to you if they don't like you. To me, that's a fuck you. I don't want to hear anything else about, oh, it was something else. No, that's fucked up. You don't fire somebody on their birthday if you like them. That's just my opinion. But then, everyone thought like, okay, what coach are they going to look at? I had no idea. And they said Chip Kelly. At the time, I was like, well, Chip Kelly has failed in the NFL. Maybe he will bring back the blur. Now, knowing what I know now, and that he did do the interview, and he admittedly said he will not be bringing the blur. That should tell you something about UCLA. You hired the name. I thought we were buying the package of the blur. That's what I was expecting. That was Michael was definitely expecting. David Woods. I'm just naming out people who were like in the know of just UCLA football, who work for recruiting sites and just who are psychopaths like me that love UCLA football. Our assumption was Chip Kelly. Again, Oregon fans said, hey, he's not that much of a recruiter. I don't know what's going on. Can everybody hear me? Because I feel like
I can hear you, man. I'm letting you speak your piece.
Oh,
I hear
okay,
you, bro.
okay. Just checking, just checking. But just overall, like I thought, Oregon fans said that Chip Kelly is not that much of a recruiter. I said, no. He's going to learn from that. He's going to, he's going to do what he needs to do. Obviously, that was my bad. He hired his old geriatric buddies who didn't put in the time or effort in recruiting. People just think that, okay, you visit a high school that's recruiting. That's the bare minimum, dude, just to show up. It's the fact of hearing like nothing in regards. When Jim Mora left UCLA, the presumption, I would assume everyone's presumption, that UCLA recruiting was healthy. That's it. It was healthy. It was in good position. And Chip Kelly was going to ascend. It was going to get it. It has declined. Even at Jim Mora's worst, in his bad years, in his last year, fan support was still there. For some odd reason, Chip Kelly thought that UCLA was this. I don't know. It needed fixing, and so he cleaned it out, and he booted and kicked out damn near. Because I'm trying
Probably
to think
half the
of
team.
half the team.
35-40%. Yeah,
about half the team, and I have to say this again: the players that he kicked off were future starters. They were future starters. Now, are they happen to be in the NFL right now? Besides Jalen Phillips, no, but they were quality UCLA football players that were better than the current players that Chip Kelly decided to keep. So any good players that might have there's a lot of issues I have in those first 3 seasons has murdered. Like Armand was there doing the more. It was fucking popping. And so it took 6 seasons. Well, actually the first 3 that Chip Kelly damn near bludgeoned the UCLA fan base. And like, people complain there's 8,000 fans. Well, that's what you get when you gut your fucking program, when you literally just kick off all the good players, and and the thing is, he didn't replace them. I would have had nothing to complain about if he replaced those good players with his good players. All he did was get some walk-ons, some tryhards, and just the guys. And there was moments where in the DTR era, he had one good season. If you had to really reevaluate Chip Kelly's seasons, his 6 seasons, there's one good season, and that was DTR's last season, if that. So
No,
it's
definitely, it was definitely his best year. But no, I mean, there was not nothing left behind it because I mean, I would never denigrate the kids that are in the program right now.
oh not
But there
oh
wasn't
no
that,
no no. It was
but
just the fact of, because I follow recruiting for so long. It's important that you really are aggressive.
mhm.
Does it always mean you're going to get all the 5 stars, all the 4 stars? No, but you should be able to get the 3 stars that you know. UCLA has always done well with 3 stars, and the fact that Chip Kelly was looking over 3 stars that would have major impact at UCLA, it told me enough. When he disregarded Texas, Texas was like the biggest supplemental um, state for UCLA. I can't. It will take me a while. I need to like look back of how many Texas players were on Moore's team, but they were contributors.
No, I mean, there's a good amount of them. One of them started in the Super Bowl yesterday. Jake Brendel, the center for the 49ers, from Plano, Texas, I believe. I mean,
Right.
just to give you an idea. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
So my question is to Chip Kelly is, why did you cut that pipeline? It was
Uh,
already set up. That's what I'm trying to say is Mora left the even though Mora has his flaws, he left a map where you can build on. But for some reason, Chip Kelly said, fuck that. I'm going to Georgia. I'm going to Connecticut. I'm going to the East Coast. I'm going to not put as much effort in California and Texas and Arizona, Nevada, and Oregon. Because typically the traditional states that UCLA does well in is Nevada, Arizona, Texas, heavily. I mean, come on now. We had Skip Hicks, one
yep.
of the best. It's like this is not rocket science. And because of NIL, it has amplified it has made recruiting a little bit more challenging. But the fact is, we wasn't even in some of these kids' ears to even take us seriously. So when they did offer, like a Stroud, the quarterback who now is fucking living it up in the NFL, you're gonna offer him late in the game and thinking, oh, I'm so fucking blessed to receive a UCLA offer. I was like, motherfucker, it's like, dude, you have to be in there early. So when you do talk all that books and ball, he understands where you're coming from. They
The ones that did it for me, it was Stroud and it was Jaden Daniels. Those were the two recruitments that were just like, what's going on here? Like,
correct,
let's be serious. But
right?
no, I mean, I do have to cut you off
Yeah,
because
no, no, no,
my
definitely.
apologies
I'm
on that.
done. I'm done.
Oh no, you're good. The reason why I was able to extend my hard cap by like 10 minutes, but that's all I got,
Oh
unfortunately.
yeah, no
No,
worries,
I
no
but
worries, no worries, no worries. I'm sorry.
I fully take your point. No, there is something to the idea that UCLA. I mean, there is a template for what has worked at UCLA. Now, the NIL element of it
Oh, one
was
more
not
point.
there.
One more point, Michael.
Go ahead.
I did hear something on broadcast which was very like it was very positive. So it look. I don't want to say anything on what's been done on broadcast, but it looks like
That's fine.
there is going to be a very big change that we're all going to like.
Oh, can you just say I haven't had the chance to listen. Can you tell me what they said?
It was in regards to NIL and really trying bring basically the whales are coming.
Okay, I hope
So
so.
and the in it and Mark, I'm not sure if it's Mark Drummond itself, but UCLA, the university, is trying to build something with the men of Westwood. So they
That would be
coming,
nice.
they
Okay.
coming.
That would be a significant and that would be a positive change, and that would change the tenor and the dynamic of the way that I interpret the way that things are right now. If that is something that they are able to do on an institutional level, that filters down, and that makes that kind of rising tide lifts all boats in a sense. That in itself would give Deshaun more of a chance to succeed, and I would obviously love for to be the case. So anyway, but thank you for weighing in. I appreciate it. I mean, a couple other things that I'll add. I kind of piggyback what he said. There are a couple of things that Jim Mora did and that Mick Cronin has done that are easily replicable, but I mean, they're so basic, but at the same time, people just haven't done them for some reason. The first is have a have an outlet for direct fan outreach. Don't let fans talk to, like, literally blow you up necessarily, but make them feel like they have a stake, they have a role in the program. And the other thing is have enthusiasm for the job. Even if it's not something where you are an outward rah guy, just make it clear to the fans that there is something being built and that you are trying to kind of rally them to your side in a sense. There is a very substantial, like, there is something to be said, excuse me, for the idea that if they see you building it, they will come. It doesn't even have to be built just yet. There has to be that critical thing. There has to be hope. If fans are given even a modicum of hope, they will respond with passion, varying degrees of enthusiasm, but absolute interest, and that is the key. So if you have hope, you have a chance to build growing levels of interest. So if they do that kind of a thing for NIL, that will create hope, that will create interest, and that will be a virtuous cycle in and of itself. Thank you, bud. I appreciate it. Alex, go for it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Of course.
Every time there's an opening at UCLA, there's always a lot of political pressure from alumni to hire a former player. We see it a lot in basketball with Earl Watson and some of his friends from his era. For those who pressured to get Foster hired, the job's not done. You don't just get him hired and say, we got our guy. They need to keep pressuring the AD not to leave their guy out to hang in the wind and fail with no investment. So for all the former UCLA players who helped get Foster this job, they need to be pestering Jarmond constantly to give him the support that he needs to succeed. And even on the basketball side, if you ever want UCLA in the future, or, if Mick Cronin retires or whatnot, and you want them to consider a former Bruin who's maybe short on experience but high on, love for the school, you need UCLA to have this experience succeed so that they're not afraid to touch that stove in the future. So I feel like there should be a lot of pressure coming from not just former UCLA football players, but also basketball players on this athletic department to make sure they give Foster every single thing he needs, and that this is not just some sort of cheap hire that fails because they, gave him nothing.
No, completely agree. Alex, it is everything about UCLA right now. The name of the head coach is kind of irrelevant in a sense. Obviously, it's relevant because it's Deshaun Foster, and we all know about him. But like from a greater picture perspective, everything is about the institutional and donor level investment in NIL. The more that builds up, the more there is a chance for success with anybody you have, because at that point you can compete for the Jimmies and Joes in the way that UCLA was able to in the past. I mean, it was really the recruiting. It was on the backs of Adrian Clem and Demetrius Martin that UCLA was able to build up those first few years of the Jim Mora era before they fell off. If you have fan enthusiasm, seeing that there is hope. Why were fans so excited about the players that were coming in in those first 3 years of Mora? Because there was the idea that if we have elite talent and we have coaches who are showing themselves to be competent, we have a chance. I remember that there were podcasts where people were mentioning as UCLA Lee Corso said that Brett Hundley was going to win a Heisman. Kirk Herbstreit thought that we were going to be in the BCS national championship game. Like, you have that hype. You have that. You don't want to be hype merchants for the sake of it, because then you're like other people that I've talked about. But there has to be substance to it. But without the marriage of the two, without that hype, you can't build on the substance, because that hype is what allows fans to have that level of interest, that level of enthusiasm. But without the substance, the hype balloon dies off. You need both. You can't just be all substance the way it seemed like Chip Kelly was building towards, and you can't be all hype the way that other programs have been in the past. You have to bring the two together. But the hype part of it is real. That does have to exist. And if you have, and so in the modern world of college football, if you are able to make NIL work, you are able to get back to that level of fan cyclical engagement that has just dropped off recently, quite frankly. So, Alex, I completely agree with you, man. Anything else you want to throw out there?
No, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Oh, of course, but you got it. All right. More Bruin. I think Steve is your name. Go for it.
Thanks, Michael. So I want to look to the future real quick, and then I have a question for you.
Go for it.
So, and regarding your hype talk, it's hype first, then proof in the pudding, and then the hype train keeps rolling. So I think
Yep.
you're absolutely correct. So
Exactly.
let's look forward, because I was thinking about something today after being so negative about a Jarman because I can't stand the guy as an AD, but that's beside the point. Let's look forward in a year, okay? And let's talk about the fact that there will be a chancellor hired at UCLA. I think, in my opinion, the most important person watching this year is whoever that future chancellor is going to be, because Deshaun Foster has a chance to now build the hype machine. And if the chancellor sees that he is serious and that he is working hard and that he's putting in the time, I believe there's a chance the chancellor falls in love with UCLA football. And if the chancellor signs on, as we saw back in the 80s, and even a stint of Mora, this university can be a juggernaut. I am not talking about top 25. I'm talking about top 10, top 5. Imagine if we were to sustain success like the Mora years over a 10-year period. That's a juggernaut because of our natural advantages that we offer. So with that being said, and with the chancellor coming up next year, I have 2 questions actually. One, Michael, what do you see as a successful first year for Foster if we're sitting here having a conversation 1 year from now? And 2, if you're the chancellor and you may be on the fence about sports where you're like, yeah, I want it to succeed, but I'm also not kind of fully bought in, what do you think they're looking for from Foster in order to get that buy-in?
I mean, there's 2 parts of it. I'm going to take the second part first, and maybe it'll bleed into the first part of it anyway. As far as what they're looking for, so what do I consider a successful year? Actually, let me just start there. I think if you get into a bowl I think getting into a bowl game would help considerably, because there is an expectation with the way that the schedule sets up that it's going to be a tough year of tough sledding for UCLA, almost a year 0 of sorts. If you It's that old adage about expectations. I mean, you beat them by $1 and you're the king. You underperform them by $1 and nobody wants to touch you. If you exceed expectations even a little bit, that starts that hype train rolling again, or it builds momentum for that hype train. If you are around where the expectations are this year, it's a bit of a problem. It's just something where the program needs to be shaken. The fan base needs to be shaken out of the doldrums. And so if you exceed expectations even a little bit this year, that will go a long way towards doing so. And so I think the two kind of blend together, actually. I think that's what a chancellor would be looking for, is the idea that that Deshaun is somebody who is worth building around, in a sense, not just as a person who is able to kind of be a touchstone for his kids in the locker room and all that kind of stuff, but is outcome, not just process oriented in that way, but also outcome oriented. The proof is in the pudding. The success is on the field. That he's kind of bringing the best of both worlds to the table, and I think at that point there would be a significant push to build around him. But I think, this first year, I think it's about beating just even minimally beating expectations. You beat expectations, and then you would have the fan base almost completely on your side at that point.
So is that mark to you a 6-win mark and a bowl game?
Yeah, for me it would be. Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I say all this is because I think UCLA is at a critical crossroads.
Agreed.
With the chancellor being hired next year. If it is a sports-oriented hire, or even somewhat of one versus what Block has been, I still believe we can be a juggernaut, because look at what we did with Mora in a very short time. So that's all I got today, but I appreciate you taking me on, and go Bruins.
Go Bruins, sir. I'm going to read something real quick, and this is just something that somebody DM'd me earlier today. It's a quote from Chancellor Charles Young. Um, a university is like any other organization. Public relations are an important factor. Getting it known, making it a common word amongst people throughout the world. Athletics contributes to that. Has given a positive image. When people think of UCLA, they think of its excellence in athletics. It's a program based on quality. It's a program that's intimately related to our educational program, and I think it has been one of the factors contributing to growth, both quantitatively and qualitatively, of the institution. So, I mean, eh, there have been people in the past who have had that vision, and it would be nice to know that those kinds of people are in power at UCLA going forward. I think Gene Block might be that for other parts of the university. He hasn't been it for athletics outside of a couple of years of kind of slightly moderate enthusiasm when Mora was here. And I'm hoping, Jarman's made his hire. Now he has to make that hire work. Let's see if he is that guy. Again, have my doubts, hoping he can be that guy. Thank you, bud. Appreciate it. Jack, go for it. Will, if you can ask me once Jack's done, I think that we can do about like 30 seconds or so. But Jack, go first, and then I'll get to Will, and then we gotta absolutely cut it off. So Jack, go for it.
What's up, guys? I've kind of been disappointed today because this feels like the lazy hire, the continuity hire. Not because of Deshaun Foster. Nothing wrong with Deshaun Foster. I'm sure if he has the right support system, he'll be a hell of a coach. Hit the ground hard recruiting, everyone says. I still need to see it because I still need to see it, and I have my doubts, but I'm sure it can be done because he's young, energetic coach. He was, I think he was on that '98 team that almost made the Natty. To me, it's because some of the reasons given from some of the leaks was continuity. Continuity, 8+ wins in 3 years that still keeps getting brought back, which guys is not a freaking achievement, dude. It's not an achievement. So to me, that's why I was kind of pissed about it, and I'm kind of pissed about it because if those were the reasons, then Foster isn't going to get the support. If he interviewed best out of all the candidates, we'll go for it. Give it to the best available guy. But like to me, it didn't seem like it, especially when you have someone like Tony White, who was reportedly, um, apparently, word was that he was already kind of during the interview process, already speaking to donors, which to me gives like a Jim Mora like effect, where he hits the ground running, starts firing everyone up. But hope isn't dead. Even if it turns out to be a complete utter failure, I think UCLA will be back, especially since now we're going to Big Ten play. And if we falter, we're gonna falter real quick. We're gonna go to the bottom of the barrel real quick. And I know the powers that be at UCLA, they got a lot of them got big egos. And once UCLA is at Vanderbilt level, I think they're gonna start to realize, oh shoot, we kind of messed up. Let's try to fix it. So I have other thoughts that a lot of people already share, so I won't share those because it's kind of a repeat of what other people said about Go Bruins. I hope we're all wrong, and I hope Foster turns out to be a heck of a hire. But right now, kind of seeing is believing.
Yep. Here's the thing about UCLA because of the way the last few years has gone. Thank you, Jack. I really appreciate it. The it's They've lost the benefit of the doubt in a sense. They've lost the idea that that there's trust in the people at the top of the food chain and knowing what they're doing. So they kind of have to reprove themselves to the UCLA fans in a sense. Um, I think we had Will Miller who was ready to talk, but he might have dropped off. Will, let me give you 30 seconds. If you're able to hop back on, please do. Would love to hear what you had to say. If not, then we'll call it a night here. But anyway, no, I really do think this has been a productive conversation just because for me, hearing from all you guys and kind of the way that the conversation has gone has reinforced for me the idea that there is, okay, Will's back on. Just to conclude the thought real quick, there is there there is a fan base here, and there is a true desire amongst UCLA fans to see success, and
You guys hear me?
it's just about making sure. Yep, I can hear you, Will. It's just we hope that
All right.
it gets there. The powers that be make it happen. Will, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, my only comment was, look, it was a very underwhelming hire. I mean, I haven't listened to the entire space. I'm gonna go back and re-listen, but My only comment was, look, I mean, I I'm happy that we have somebody in a position that has connections to UCLA, wants it to win, and we'll see if it if it actually comes down to wins and losses. I know a lot of it's NIL, recruiting, all that kind of stuff, but man, I mean, just the past couple years of Chip Kelly just not giving a shit has just really worn on me because I have a UCLA tattoo on my body and I don't mind disclosing that information. I show it to everybody. And I know a lot of people have true love for this university. And so if Foster can bring any kind of that energy in, that'll be a relief. And, if he goes out there and he's just atrocious, then we can figure something out later on. But at least we have somebody that wants us to, at least on paper, win. That's my only comment. I'll listen to the rest of the space. Love what you're
Awesome.
doing. Go Browns.
Thank you. We'll really appreciate it. And I definitely see where you're coming from. I think you capture a lot of the sentiment that's being expressed in here. Jack mentioned Tony White. One reason why I'll tell you guys I was particularly enthusiastic about Tony White is because I know two of the names that he had reached out to that had preliminarily agreed to be part of his staff, and they would have been really, 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 really nice hires that got that whole hype train rolling. Like I can't say the names because they're pretty public facing figures, but in the coaching world and in the social media world, but they were pretty well lined up to be part of the UCLA program. I don't have the same confidence that that Deshaun would reach out to the same guys. I mean, whoever it is should let them know that those people were interested in UCLA. But regardless, that was one thing that stood out to me about Tony. But at the end of the day, the hire is made. I had my initial reactions to it. I think processing a little bit more as the day has gone on. I have more. I've given more credence to the idea that there is a path to success, but it requires people to have a level of professionalism and vision that it requires them to have a level of professionalism and vision to build the program around him, because one man can't pull the whole sled together, or screw sled can't pull the whole tank forward on his own. It's going to take a community of professionals and fans around him. So the hope is that those people, that us as a fan base, will react positively to the things that we see, and it'll become a virtuous cycle of sorts. But the UCLA fans are so burnt out right now, I think they need to see it from the school and from the staff, and that there's concrete steps being made towards something. And then at that point, I think you have a fan base that's ready to kind of love again. They just need something to love. So in the meantime, I'll leave it there. I have people that hate me right now for delaying them by 20 minutes, but it is what it is. I enjoy talking to you guys always. In the meantime, anybody who ever wants to hear anything I have to say, I'm a DM or a tweet away, and hopefully do more of these in the future, or have a reason to do more of these in the future. And until the next time we all get the chance to chat, go Bruins. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.